What a tremendous decision to come do something like this to start your new year. My name is Jimmy. This is my government name. If you were to type this in, it would bring you to my book on Amazon. If you want to buy that, it's not cheap, but it's fun. My name's Jimmy. I'm with Attainable Dreams. We're a group facilitation organization that goes around the nation for recovery education and counseling. I'm a person in long term recovery, certified alcohol and drug counselor. And I go around to different facilities, hospitals, institutions, and schools and give lectures and hold classes on recovery education. And what I do is I talk a lot about the spiritual principles that I believe are in recovery that you may also find in things like the 12 steps and how you can apply that to your everyday living and long term recovery. So, where we are in our curriculum today is actually at the end. So it's just so interesting that here we are, the last couple days of 2023, and we're moving into 2024. And this is probably the last class. This is the last class of 2023. By Monday, 2024, New Year's is going to begin. And next week, in addition to New Year's beginning, so is the beginning of this curriculum. So next week, when you come back, we are going to start with class 101, addiction 101. If you're a repeat rehab type of person, you may have heard of this class over and over and over again, where they just talk about addiction. And I can't wait because you must be a pro on this type of information, and you are going to be so needed and wanted to give us that information in the next class. But for those of you who don't know much about addiction, you may learn a thing or two, and that starts next week. But today, we start at the end. Wow. What does that mean? That means that today we're going to talk about spiritual awakenings and where those come from. So, where do we get spiritual awakenings? How does one have a spiritual awakening? What is a spiritual awakening? And in addition to that, we're also going to talk about what it means to carry that message to an addict and how to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Um, this most of the time I talk about the spiritual awakening in step 12 in a way that brings us into first step. But we might as well just jump right into it. Before we begin, any questions, comments, concerns about what we talked about last week or anything at all? I did not make that tenderloin yet. I haven't even cut it yet. So I still got to do that this weekend. So it's still good. Thank God.
You doing that for New Year's?
I got to do something with it. I have a brisket. We have like a large brisket for tomorrow. So hopefully Sunday I do it New Year's. We got a big old brisket that we're going to smoke on the Traeger tomorrow. So hopefully I'm a big meat guy. So hopefully I can cut up that beef. Got a big beef tenderloin that I have been waiting to cut up. So went ahead and got this brisket anyways. Like when you're into food, that's what you do. You end up buying a shit ton of food. And like at one point I'll cook this. I don't know when, but I can't wait to cook it. I still haven't cooked it yet. We made Cubans last week for Christmas. I didn't want to do a ham. We did turkey and I didn't want to do ham. So I took the ham and made Cubans out of it. So with the Mojo pork and stuff. Hey, Bob, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, man? Good to see ya. Welcome, welcome. All right, you're just in time as we get started. So, let's begin by just putting this up on the board. If at any point anybody has a question, feel free. Like, dude, if you want to share at all, when I am sharing the screen like I am now, it's difficult to see you guys. So if you have something to share and my screen is shared, cut me off don't raise your hand because I'm not going to see you. Just feel free to share. And I'm happy. I know exactly where I am. I rarely lose my train of thought. So in the event that you have something you want to share, just go ahead and say it. That way I'm not speaking the whole time and disregarding you. Don't feel like I'm disregarding you. I just cannot see you. I'm always happy to answer any questions anyone has about anything. Okay, so bam, let's get started. Having had a awakening as a result of working these steps, we tried to carry this message to annex and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Realized that I was writing in capitals and just decided to not stop typing. So there is no difference between capitals and uncapitals. It was just a typo, just so everybody knows. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps. So we're going to start there. Let's just go ahead and underline this as a result of working these steps. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of working these steps. The spiritual awakening, right, is the result of working steps. So these two things are equal to one another. Okay. If you want to have a spiritual awakening, this is implying one of the ways you could get that is by working the steps. There are endless, literal, infinite ways one can get a spiritual awakening. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I'm just some counselor and guy in recovery. All right. My opinion is that a spiritual awakening is any new experience, whatever your opinion is about any experience. The opinion that you have on working the steps is the spiritual awakening that you have gotten as a result of the experience you had. Now, a spiritual awakening is different than a physical awakening, is different than a mental awakening. Okay. The spirit is defined as the non-physical part of a human that is the seat of character and emotion. So let me just look that up real quick. You guys should be able to see my screen. The spirit definition, non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of character and soul. Those qualities regarded as forming the definitive or typical elements in a character of a person, nation, or group, or in the thought and attitudes of a particular period. So we'll go with that first definition. The non-physical part of a person, which is the seat for emotions and character, the soul. Now, how does the emotion and character generate how do the steps generate change in the emotion, the character, and spirit of an individual? I can give you that answer. Now, what this may be, it's like the non-physical part of a person that changes spiritually and emotionally. I think it was last week I was describing how if somebody wants, say you join a health class, a health group, right? Let's say you join Weight Watchers or some shit, right? Jenny Craig, right? You're doing the Jenny Craig program or some shit, right? After you work Jenny Craig, your opinion about that program is a spiritual awakening that you developed. How would that happen? How would someone develop a spiritual awakening as a result of doing Jenny Craig, right? Well, just consider the fitness journey alone, all right? one would have to manage. Well, first off, if someone's on Weight Watchers, they probably are experiencing eating too much too often. Similar to people who are here, they're drinking or using too much too often. People don't come here because they're drinking 2 drinks a week. People don't come here from drinking, just like a one drink a night. People come here because they're generally drinking an excessive amount of alcohol over a short period of time that exceeds over a long period of time. Does that make sense? So you're drinking a lot for a long time or using a lot or whatever the case. And that's how people generally end up here. Now, instead of going off on the Jenny Craig one, we might as well use addiction. Okay. How does someone have a spiritual awakening as a result of using too much too often? Well, you may see someone, if you want to be if you want to continue your journey, then you're going to have to, dude, I'm using like 3 examples. I'm just going to go back to the Jenny Craig one. If you want to lose weight, that means that you're going to have to manage emotional eating. Okay. Like you're going to be hungry and you're going to have to not eat, right? You're going to maybe be stressed out and want to eat. You're going to have to not eat. You're going to be tired and want to eat. Yeah, you're going to have to maybe just not eat, maybe not eat, maybe make better decisions about the food you're going to eat. So maybe you're driving and you're really hungry and you want to pull over and get, fast food. Well, if you're going to be on this journey of health, that means that you're not going to make the decision to do that. You're going to decide to consume something else, regardless of the emotional state that you're in, which is derived from circumstances, moods, and relationships. So it doesn't matter who you're with, you're not going to eat that way. It doesn't matter what you're around, you're not going to eat that way. What the situation is, you're not going to eat that way. That is what you're signing up to do. As a result of that, the emotional states that we are in may change. We may no longer be in an emotional state of depression or anxiety as a result of managing our drinking in these different circumstances in response to moods or relationships. And as a result of managing our decision making in these emotions, our character may change. The mental and moral quality distinctive to an individual may change. So they no longer think that it's okay to eat this food or eat that food or eat at this time or eat at that time. They no longer think it's right to engage in this type of behavior or that. The morals around food, what is right and wrong, good and bad, begin to change. And you begin, from that change, people defend their character. They defend the person they are. They defend their choices. The same exact way an alcoholic may defend alcohol. Once they start having the mental and moral quality, the characteristics of an alcoholic, one of the sure signs is someone who defends alcohol when alcohol is in fact the problem. Now, you defending something is not the problem if it's good for you. Defending something that is bad for you is the problem. So if you could use this and defend recovery. The mental and moral quality of somebody defending their recovery may be good, right? That may be a good characteristic for someone to have. Now you have somebody who is, let's say, emotionally volatile, right? Emotionally all up and up, high highs, low lows over a short period of time. The same day, someone is extremely happy and then they are extremely sad and then they go, just fluctuated. Imagine if who they think they are does not align with the way society treats them, right? Dude, I don't think I'm an addict, but everybody treats me like I'm an addict. I don't think there's a problem, but everybody treats me like there is a problem. That's scary. That's confusing. Not knowing why I'm in these high or low, extreme emotional states is a scary place to be. When you're extremely depressed and you don't know why why or what is causing that, that's a horrifying place to be, right? When you have extreme anxiety or fears and you're unable to identify those and work on those are horrifying places to be. When you have people looking at you and telling you you're one person and you don't see yourself as that person, that's a scary place to be. That's not fun, right? And generally, we're trying to figure out answers on this journey, right? Now, let's say someone starts, same thing with the Jenny Craig. You may start, if you manage your eating habits and you're not overeating during different circumstances, emotions, relationships, and if you do that, you may change. Your character may change. The mental and moral quality of somebody may change, right? The same way of someone who overeats. Let's say they eat too much too often. They may start to eat emotionally. They eat when they're stressed. They eat when they're sad. They eat when they're happy. They eat when you come over, when he comes over, when she comes over. They're eating when they're stressed. They're eating when they're happy. They're eating when there's food in the fridge. They're eating when there's not food in the fridge. They're eating on their way to go eat, right? These people may start to develop the character qualities of someone who eats too much. What are those character qualities? And I mean, I'm not fucking off by saying these things. I'm literally not, dude. Lethargic, lazy, right? These people may have certain health problems. They may move less, you know what I mean? And this isn't like I'm being mean or rude. Like, some people associate saying these things with rudeness or meanness, like talking to people about their defects of character, like talking to them about their shortcomings is like a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Who else is going to talk to you about it? Who else is going to show you these things, So, I mean, these may be common shortcomings. They failed to meet what a healthy diet is, what their gut microbiome needs, certain macronutrients, et cetera, et cetera. What happens from that? You're going to be tired, dude. Your sleep may get messed up. People develop different problems and diseases and all sorts of things happen, right? Dude, if you have someone who's drinking too much, too often, maybe they show up late places. Maybe when they show up, they're drunk. Maybe they have legal issues. Maybe they have family problems. Maybe they, don't get good sleep. Maybe they're depressed. Like, dude, I'm not being a dick by saying these things. These are just exactly what's associated with that type of behavior. The change, there's no telling when someone is going to become aware of their addiction. Just because someone becomes aware of their addiction doesn't necessarily mean that they get help, right? The spiritual awakening that we have prior to coming in a place like this is as a result of using too much too often, having problems happen, trying to manage them, and failing to sustain that management. That's what ends us up here. And usually people, when they get here, they go, the spiritual awakening is from, right? Like, let's go back to this. Spiritual awakening, let's say from working the steps. What is the spiritual awakening from working the steps? Maybe it's like, wow, that worked. I am a new person. Holy shit. Holy shit. Right? How did that happen? Somebody usually has to come to this awareness as a result of working the steps. What are some other ways that somebody could come to this awareness? They could, I don't know, go to treatment. They could get sober at home. They could go to jail, right? They could, there's many different things that people can do that end them up in this place of having a spiritual awakening, right? Right now, we are at a treatment center. Ready? Go to treatment. That's the one that we chose here. I'm going to go to treatment. Do. Now, the spiritual awakening, I mean, there's no telling like what that is. Like somebody could go to treatment and their spiritual awakening could be that didn't work, you know? Now the real question is, why didn't that work? Is it something I did? Is it the program that doesn't work? Or is it me who didn't work the program? Maybe Jenny Craig works, dude. You know what I mean? Maybe Weight Watchers works. It just doesn't work for the people who don't work it. Maybe 12-step programs work. Maybe they do. Maybe it just doesn't work for people who don't fucking work it. Maybe treatment works. Maybe the whole method of treatment that Louisville Addiction Center has right now actually works. It's just we are not the ones who are working this workable form of treatment, right? And somebody has to come to their own spiritual awakening as a result of that. And again, that's on a foundation of emotional change, character development, shortcomings, etc. I mean, again, you could have a spiritual awakening as a result of anything. I often talk about spiritual awakenings from having kids, like, how can I put this into terms? Who has kids in here? Raise your hand if you have children. Okay. Those of you who do not have children, you can't fathom what it is like to have kids. Like, do y'all with kids remember what it was like to not have kids? To nap, right? To do whatever it is that you want to do. You know what I mean? To not. It's almost odd to think that when I was childless, I rarely considered other people. Rarely. And then all of a sudden you have a kid and you consider this person. You know what I'm saying? People who have children, when you didn't have kids and people tried talking to you about having kids, how would you, or like about their kids, how would you respond to that? Like, cool, awesome. Like, you get into work. Hey, what'd you guys do this weekend? Oh man, we went out partying. What'd you do this weekend? It was real cool. Me and my family, we set up Christmas lights. I would look at them and I'd be like, that is the lamest shit ever, bro. Like, you set up Christmas lights with your kids. You know what I mean? I was out there ripping and kicking it. You know what I mean? It's like they talk to me about their kids. It just goes in one ear and out the other. You know what I'm saying? It's not that I was inconsiderate. I just have no idea what it's like to have kids. You know what I'm saying? And then you end up having children. Okay. Now, those of you who don't have children, this is what happens. You end up discovering you're going to have a child. I was extremely anxious and nervous. And then when the baby came, all my anxiousness and nervousness went out the window. And I got excited to take care of this kid. In the journey of taking care of children that you birthed or you helped born, right? Often you need to manage your emotions, right? There's no more getting angry. You know what I mean? There's no more, being tired or too tired and sleeping. And there's no more of that shit. Like, now your kids want to hang out. You got to go hang out with your kids. Like, that's just what you got to do. You know what I mean? There's no more, there's just no more getting angry in front of your kids, because the last thing you want to do is pass that shit on to your kids, et cetera, right? There's also your change in your thinking and your morals. You're no longer just thinking about yourself. Now you're thinking about the family. Now you're thinking about, protecting them and having enough for them and putting food on the table, et cetera, right? And not only is that, but you also think to yourself, like, isn't it crazy that everybody did this? Everybody goes through this. Like every single parent probably goes through the same crying baby, the same, bedwetting problems and all that. Isn't that crazy that everybody goes through this shit? The empty nest and the kids going through high school and all, like everybody goes through this. That is just absolutely crazy. I never even thought of that, And those moments are, in my opinion, spiritual awakenings. You come to realize, wow, this is like a bigger picture than me. This is greater than what I am, It's no longer about me. It's like now it's about the family, right? And when you really work on your recovery and you get to the point of, you got to remember, like at this point in your recovery, you no longer decide to use too much. You no longer decide to use at all. And you're going through your recovery and you're having to say no to drugs and alcohol in different circumstances. You're not stressed drinking, happy drinking, sad drinking, depressed drinking, anxious drinking. There is no more drinking. It's like until you view the last time you used as the last time you used, it might not be the last time you used. So you need to say, some people may be saying, man, that's not the last drink I'm ever going to have. I'm going to drink again. I don't know when, but I'm going to. Some people may say, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to use again. Yeah, well, you probably will until you declare that was my last time using. The opportunity for using is still there until you solidify that was my last time using. Now, in that solidification that's my last time using, you're going to have to manage your emotions differently. There's no more using or drinking during the game, at the concerts, when you go to the football game. There's no drinking and having wings. There's no coming home from work and having a drink. There's no, morning drink. There's no drinking while you're grilling or doing the lawn or having a cocktail when you go out to dinner or a glass of wine. There's none of that. There is no drinking because you're happy or sad or bored or lonely or tired or stressed or happy or celebrating or whatever. There's no of that. There's choosing not to use when your friends come over and they're drinking, when your family's drinking, when strangers are drinking around you, when it doesn't matter. You're not using if there's alcohol around you, if there's tequila around you, if there's liquor in the fridge, if there's hand sanitizer in your house. You're not drinking it. Right? And it doesn't matter if you're not going to drink because you think you can have one. You're not going to drink because everybody's going to judge you if you don't. Like, to be in recovery means that you're not going to drink even when you think it's a good idea to drink. Okay? That is what recovery means. Okay? If you do that, when you do that, and you look at your part in your emotions, like maybe we created our depression. Maybe we created our fear. Maybe we created these bad relationships. Maybe we created that. You start to see how the mental and moral quality changes. So maybe you no longer think it's right to drink and drive. You no longer think it's right to maybe just like talk to people a certain way, or get so angry, or be so scared of the future, or be so resentful towards people. Maybe you start to think it's better to forgive. Maybe you start to believe that, it's better to love and have faith instead of be so fearful or angry or resentful. Maybe instead of having shame, I allow myself to be weak and vulnerable. And I start thinking that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be weak. It's okay to forgive people. It's okay to fucking love people where they're at. You know what I mean? It's okay to actually love myself, to forgive myself. Maybe those things that I did in active addiction was actually a mistake. I never meant to do those things. That was never my intention to hurt these people or cause that harm. And I want to make it up to these people. And you bravely and courageously work towards fixing your shortcomings and no longer fail to meet the standards of being a wife or a husband or a son or a daughter or a fucking brother or a sister or an aunt or an uncle. You can actually step up to that role, step up to that plate, and be the person you're meant to be. Fulfill your purpose in life every single fucking day by living with these new morals, living with this new set of values that we have developed that is no longer driven on a foundation of love for drugs and alcohol and this feeling, but instead is driven on a foundation of love for myself and my family and my health and my future. And you do this day after day, and you continue this, and you make amends to these people, these institutions, et cetera, you start thinking about, how the hell did this happen? How did I get here? Who? What? This is nuts. That's prayer and meditation. We were talking about that last week. Prayer and meditation. It gets to a point where someone says, wow, I couldn't have done this without sobriety. They say, I couldn't have done this without working the steps or going to treatment or getting a sponsor. I couldn't have done this without the help of my friends and family. People start to see the way that they were treated in their active addiction had to happen that way because that's the way that got them to where they are today, which is such a beautiful place. And maybe that's not your spiritual awakening. I'm not going to say that it is. I'm hoping that it is. I'm hoping that that's what it is, but it's totally subjective. Anybody have any comments or questions before we kind of jump into the literature a little bit? Because I have some things I want to read. Everybody's with me? Raise your hand if you're with me. Amen. Let's go. So get into some of this. So we have the spirit, non-physical part of a person. So if I want to learn how to manage my spirit or my soul, I need to learn how to manage my emotions and character. All right. Now we're getting into some of the literature. We're going all the way to step 12. All right. Let's see where we are. Am I too far? No, I don't think I am. Oh, yep. Okay. Having had spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Wait a second. Hold on. So before we get into this, you're talking about a spiritual awakening as a result of working the steps. That's a large spiritual awakening. Do spiritual awakenings occur on a day-to-day basis? Right? Like, maybe a spiritual awakening can occur every day that leads to like a larger one. A spiritual awakening to me is just like acquiring knowledge. Like your ego transcends the physical part of yourself. And I don't think you need to do, maybe you have a spiritual awakening as a result of, dude, like, I'm just going to throw out random shit, right? You have a spiritual awakening as a result of getting honest with your therapist. A spiritual awakening as a result of sharing something in group. A spiritual awakening as a result of, listening to something in group. Like there's no telling what is going to generate this spiritual awakening. It's just up to us to open our minds and be mindful enough that something out there may be generating this emotional and character change for us. And if I'm naive to it, I may never see it. If we've made it to this point, we've had a spiritual awakening, though the nature of the awakening is as individual and personal as our spiritual path. The similarities in our experiences are striking. Almost without exception, our members speak of feeling free, of feeling more lighthearted more of the time, of caring more about others, and of the ever increasing ability to step outward, outside of ourselves, and participate fully in life. The way this looks to others is astonishing. People who knew us when we were in our active addiction, often appearing angry and withdrawn, tell us that we're different people. Indeed, many of us feel as if we've begun a second life. We know the importance of remembering where we came from so we can make an effort not to forget. But the way we lived and the things that motivated us seem increasingly bizarre the longer we stay clean. The change in us didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly and gradually as we worked the steps. As you do whatever method of treatment you do, this change is going to be gradual. It's not going to happen overnight. The change that you're looking for, maybe you've heard this, we didn't become addicted overnight. So remember, easy does it. You can't force yourself into a spiritual awakening, right? Like that's not going to happen. You just go through life and maybe your spirit is awakened a bit at a time. It became increasingly more natural for us to practice the spiritual principles and increasingly uncomfortable to act out on our character defects. Is someone trying to share? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, good. No problem. So as you like in that this sense, it becomes increasingly more natural for us to practice spiritual principles, and increasingly more comfortable for us to act on character defects. The longer you stay sober, the more difficult it will be to act out on anger, to procrastinate, right? You may start to see spiritual principles as being more valuable than acting out on these shortcomings or these defects of character. So we no longer think it's okay to drink here, to drink there. We no longer think it's okay for these things to happen. And this change does not happen immediately. It happens over time. The more we are in the experiences where we're managing our emotions or our character of being a person in recovery. Notwithstanding the powerful, one-of-a-kind experience some of us have had, we've all slowly and painstakingly built a relationship with a power greater than ourselves. That power, whether it's our own best and highest nature, or a force outside ourselves, has become ours to tap into whenever we want. It guides our actions and provides inspiration for our continued growth. So, how many of us have let's just use, since not everyone has worked the steps, everybody here has been to treatment. And some of you may say, I've never been to treatment. This is my first time in treatment. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, kid. It's okay. You've probably been in treatment for at least a day now, 4 hours. Anybody doing intake today? Raise your hand if you just got here today. Okay. Fantastic. So you're...
I've been in treatment before. I came from a residential center.
Okay. Whether you have been in treatment before or you've only been here for 4 hours, right? Or a couple hours, I am interested in that experience that you have so far. So, question. What is your overall experience with rehab or addiction treatment? Like, overall experience with this experience that you're having?
Long journey.
Long journey?
Yeah, it's not been my first rodeo.
Okay. So how long has your journey been for you? When was like your first rehab?
5 years ago.
Okay. And do you have success while you're in treatment?
Definitely in treatment, yes. I've had after my first rehab or inpatient, I spent a year and a half sober, and then I've been to multiple inpatients. Embarrassed to say, but been a lot, and each time progressively got less and less until, I think now it's starting to hit home. Finally, it's all starting to click. I hope.
Okay. What have you like learned from all of your stays in rehab? Like if someone was here for their first time in rehab, or this is their first go at it, or they're an addict, they come to you and they're considering going to rehab, what would your message be to that person?
Well, first of all, I'd have to say from my experience, if you fall off a horse, don't be embarrassed to get back on. It's better than the alternate. But even though I've been through multiple inpatients programs, I've learned each thing. I've experienced each thing they've warned about all along the way. So I can say definitively, yeah, euphoric recall is real. Complacency is real. All those things that I've heard about that were just kind of like, mind fodder the first couple of times. Now I can put into real life practice. I learned the hard way what they were talking about, good or bad, but I did learn the hard way.
So let me try to put this up here. Five rehabs. Your message is, I guess, take the suggestions. Right? Would that sum up your message? Like, people are gonna say the terms, the little suggestions that they always say. You would say to that person, believe those, listen to those, and apply those.
Absolutely. And it's been more than 5 years for me.
All right.
Definitely I wish I could have had the knowledge or gained the knowledge and understood the knowledge that I was given the first time. But unfortunately, I'm stubborn and a hard learner. Not ignorant, but I'm a hard learner. I mean, it's hard for me to put those practices in place, so I had to learn things, I guess, the hard way. They knew exactly what they're talking about. So, yeah, you don't have to go through what I went through, but I had to go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm. And you said you hit the nail on the head. Like, you don't have to learn the hard way. It sucks that we learned the hard way, but somebody can hear the message that you have and say to themselves, I don't want to learn that way. Like, I can probably learn a different way. And your message, as a result of going through rehab the way that you've gone through it, is don't do it this way. Like, don't. It's like that scene in fucking Billy Madison when he's like, stay here as long as you can.
It's like, when you try to tell your kids something, you don't want them to do something, have to experience that, but ultimately they got to make their own decision if they're going to heed to that advice or not. So.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing.
You pray they will, but there's no guarantee what they're going to do with it.
Right. I agree. Anybody else? What has your experience with rehab been over the course of your life?
Similar to David, about the same amount of time, like 5 to 6 years, multiple treatments, had a couple of years of sobriety in the past, more than one occasion. Had sponsees, came to the same conclusion David did of like, I need to take every suggestion given. I learned everything the hard way. Latency got me. And the feeling of, as much as I hate saying it, but the feeling of being different comes back. Like the idea that, when you get to 5 years sober, you don't have to do this anymore. When you get to 2 years sober, you don't have to do this anymore. And I just keep moving the needle back. If the idea is, like I went to this treatment center in Tennessee, and they had like a big podium, and they had this awesome community. And I would look at the guys who got up there that were 5, 6, 7, 10 years plus sober, and I'd be like, that's cool that they come back here and do this once a year, and they don't really, they're healed and they don't have to do this anymore. And like, I know that that's a delusion, like the idea of like being healed, and I've proven it, ad nauseum, time and time again. But I'll have a lot of humility. I'll come out like a loaded gun. I get out of treatment, and I'll be feeling the effects of the getting my health back and my mind back and material things back and the pink cloud experience and all that. And eventually, the spiritual fitness will go by the wayside. The good, healthy habits that have supplanted all the shit that I had prior, that stops. It's just like the little recovery Jenga adage of like making my bed, calling my sponsor, going to me. It's always meetings first. Whatever reason, I just hate meetings, man. I loathe meetings. And there's some great meetings that I like to, I'm not going to lie and say I love to go to meetings, any meeting, even the best meeting in the world, shared by Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson, whatever. I would still be pissed off that I had to go to that meeting. I know that I would be better off for it after I left, and I would get the feeling of that. But ultimately, I just decide, like, my mind tells me that there are so many other reasons that I don't have to go. After a certain amount of time, after a year, or the first time my sponsor said, like, hey, man, you've been doing a great job. You don't have to call me every day. I might say, like, oh, man, don't tell me that. I got to keep calling you. But then it'll creep in, and it gets in there. And this, like, insidious thing just piece by piece starts robbing me blind. And it's me doing it, but it envelops me and it takes over. And before I know it, I'm like, the idea of drinking, I'm like, oh, where's that coming from? That's weird. It's like, no, dude, it's not weird. You're not doing shit. You haven't done anything for 8 months, and you're walking around saying you're sober, and you make work your higher power, or you make a relationship, your interim God, and you just think like, oh, look at this. I'm like feigning normalcy, like I'm being a normal guy, but it's like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is that, man? And then before I know it, I can drink. It's cool. You can drink now. You're good. You can drink, and you can get a little high, and you can control it. It's not true.
Yeah. What if there's someone out there, same question for you, this is their first time in rehab, or they're considering rehab or something like that, what would again, you've had the experience of going to rehab, you've had good results from it at times. What would your message be to that person?
Man, I don't know. I just keep going back and forth between like everything I thought and everything that was said to me. But I mean, David kind of nailed it with like almost like a teenager, it's like the reason I don't want you to do this is because I already did it, and it's just going to bring you pain and calamity into your life. And you're still like, yeah, right. That's not going to happen to me. So I imagine you want to put something else on that Word document other than take suggestions, but I would say take suggestions and just have humility, and that's so much easier said than done. Like, how do you create humility or maintain it, and man, that's what I'm trying to figure out. That's really why I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
is like how to hold on to humility and be of service to others and never lose sight of it. Or if you do, catch yourself quickly so that your whole life doesn't deteriorate before your eyes,
Yeah.
The thing would be,
Go ahead.
you don't run a marathon and stop mile 10 and say I'm gonna finish.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose. You're not gonna finish. You're gonna end up, you know, not completing, so, or being a failure, so to speak, you know. You can't just coast after so many miles, you know, and expect to be able to endure it, finish it.
What are some of the, would anybody else like to share before I ask my next question? Anybody, this is your first time in rehab, first time in treatment? Do you, let me ask you this, Bob. I only know your name because everybody said that you were going to come in late. Just so you know, you're probably like, how the hell does this guy know my name, dude? But my question to you is, what were your expectations? When did you get here, first off?
Second week of December.
Okay, so you've been here for about 2 weeks now?
I think they said 19 days, 18 days, something like that.
Okay. What was your expectation of rehab prior to getting here?
I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what I was getting into.
No idea. Literally, like, did you?
No idea.
You didn't, did you think it was going to be straight jackets and, you know, med lines? Did you think it was going to be, you had literally no idea?
I kind of assumed there would be a lot of discussion between some of the people that's been there, people that's not been there, like we're doing now.
Yeah. Have your expectations been fulfilled?
Yeah.
Are you happy with how your treatment has been going?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's working?
I do.
Fuck yeah, dude. Hell yeah. Do you see value in the message that your peers are sharing? Like how does, and I'm sorry for you guys, but how does hearing their story make you feel about your experience through treatment right now?
It's good to hear from somebody that's been there, done that. And they're, like to say, their experiences.
Right. Like do y'all remember your first time in treatment?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And the first time I went in, I had all these prejudices in my head going into it, even though I knew I needed it when I got there. I heard other people's stories and like, man, ain't that bad. I didn't do that, you know, until I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, I mean, when you were your first time in rehab, were there people there who had been there multiple times?
Yeah, and they gave me the same warnings, you know, and this doesn't have to be you don't have to, you don't have to come back. I'm like, well, I'm not coming back. This is it. I'm gonna get it this time. And it's the first time was my longest bout of sobriety. And then after about 18 months, I got in my head, man, I really earned this now. I can drink normal. And, that got me.
Mm.
Now here I am 5 years later, 6, whatever it's been, 5 or 6, I'm still here.
Mm.
I've spent the majority of my last 5 years of my life in some kind of rehab for the most part.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Tyler, what about you, man? Like when you were in your first place, did people come to you and say like, dude, fucking don't fuck around, like get it this one time, listen, like were people talking to you like that?
Yeah, they did. I remember actually he became a really good friend of mine, but he was younger than me. He walked up to me and, we were sitting down at lunch. He sat across from me and he had like long ass hair and he's wearing clothes that he had gotten from other people that he probably doesn't even know their first name. and he was like telling me about how he was a heroin addict, and he's like, let's be real, I'm 23, I'm gonna shoot dope again. I was just like, oh my God, why am I here? But and he did it, but he's 6 years sober. He came back one more time. He said, but then, it's like there were 5 other guys on the same day who had been to treatment multiple times, and I was doing that in my head. I was like, that's absolutely not going to be me. Like I've experienced enough pain. I was never, destined to come to a place like this, as I'm sitting in a place like this, and talking about it again. But, it's like I'm not, it's not going to happen. That won't happen to me because I'm smart or whatever. I will take, what I need to from this place, and I will go have a happy, successful, fulfilling life. And, I had to, unfortunately, prove the tenets of the big book right and then I blamed AA for a while. I was like, AA is the reason I'm an alcoholic. If I would have never gone to that place, I wouldn't have found out about this. And I've like changed the neural pathways in my brain to make it alcoholic, And I just started creating this more nonsense, make it even more difficult to, because then I wanted to try to figure out a way to change them back. And it's just like, dude, that was never, you're not a scientist. Like you made that up. It's like, just come with whatever story I wanted. But the treatment carousel thing, just like these like 21, 22-year-old, 27-year-old people who've been like, I've been to 35 treatments. I'm like, dude, how does that, like, check your timeline. Like, you're 27. How have you been to 35 treatment centers? You told me you've been to treatment more time than you've been alive, but it's like, no. I mean, it just, I was like, not only was I delusional and thinking that I was different, but I was like a little bit judgmental too, of like, well, you must be an idiot if you're back here, like, why would you fall into that lifestyle again? But it's like, dude, I did the exact same thing. That's because it's more than just like staining or whatever I thought, and no amount of pain really can prevent me from, picking up again if I don't have some form of substitution, like a spiritual program or some kind of programming in my life to keep me busy and reform my thoughts and the way I was living before,
Yeah, man. And it's like, I hear you tell that story, and all I can think about myself is you didn't choose. You never chose that kid saying that to stick with you forever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you didn't at that time, you didn't believe that this was going to be impactful. This was going to be long lasting. Like this kid sitting down across from me at the fucking lunch table saying this shit to me. I mean, you're not like, I'm not going to forget this. You know what I mean? It just happens that way. I mean, I remember I was in rehab and I was fucking, there was this one kid who I thought was like the coolest dude in rehab. And he, was like a repeat client, and he'd always be like, give me advice and be like, yo, Jimmy, don't do that. Don't do this, yada, yada, yada. And for some reason I listened to him. And one day he came in while I was like cooking chicken breast, and he gave me his 2-month key tag and goes, here you go, man. Like you're going to get this one day. Like he goes, the way that you're recovering is really fucking cool, Jimmy. And I was like, wow, Kretzel, dude, thank you, man. Like that means a lot, bro. I can't even believe. Like that's wild that you think my recovery. Like I think you're fucking cool, dude. You know what I mean? Like you're the fucking cool one, man. How the fuck? What makes you think I'm cool? And I sit there and I think like, about all the moments that me and just Kretzel had, you know. And I remember going to my individual therapist and saying, "Yeah, I want to go to the same rehab Mikey's going to." And they were like, "You don't want to go to the same rehab Mikey's going to, or like the same sober living." And I'm like, "Why, dude? He's like a major part of my recovery, this and that." And they're like, "Dude, Jimmy, he is a repeat offender. He like relapses all the time." You know what I mean? And it was weird because he gave me great advice. Hypocrites give great advice, you know. And even though he wasn't living his life sober, he wasn't doing it all right, you know what I mean? He gave me one of the greatest suggestions that could have ever been given. It saved my life. He told me not to go to Delray Beach to go hang out with some chick in sober living, you know. And I didn't choose that to be monumental information for me to take, but moments like that, like him saying that and me rethinking it, played a role in me becoming the person that I am today. All those little moments where people tried talking to me and everything like that was an opportunity for me to say, maybe I have a problem. Maybe this is something I should do or should not do. And just because I started doing it in recovery doesn't mean I didn't have the opportunity to do it in active addiction. There were many opportunities in active addiction for me to be sober. I just wasn't open to them. I just couldn't see them. I didn't see these as opportunities. I saw these as barriers or, you know, whatever the heck. It's like now, when you get to this point, you may start to see those moments that happened in the past as opportunities that I didn't take. And maybe it's possible that I still embody that type of mentality right now. And I'll embody that type of mentality a year from now, which means I need to be in tune with my emotions. I need to be in tune with my character. And if I'm not, dude, who knows who I'm going to become later on down the line? You know, 5 years from now, am I going to be looking back on my life saying, like, what the fuck? Or am I going to be looking back on my life saying, dude, that was the greatest decision I ever made in my life? It may have taken me 5, 6, 20, who knows how many times, but bro, it worked. It clicked for me, you know? And dude, that's your message. If you've been here for 18 days, you have a message. If you've been here for 1 day, you have a message. If you've been to multiple places like this, you have a message that is valuable to someone. You have value. In your life, all of your experience is valuable. The experience that we're talking about here that is most valuable is your experience with recovery and all the knowledge you've gained from it as everything you've tried to do with it, whether it's failure trying to get sober, making it trying to get sober, going to rehab, 12-step programs, whatever the case may be. It's all valuable information. And what lasting changes have occurred? Like, just consider this. Let's consider the spiritual awakening of discovering that you are, in fact, an addict. What lasting changes have occurred in your life from admitting that you have a problem with addiction?
We say again, what lasting changes
have occurred in your life as a result of accepting that you have a problem with addiction? So, what lasting changes have come from your addiction?
I mean, I guess the acceptance of the fact that, like, there's no escaping this on my own will. You know, like, I'm at peace with the idea that I've got to do this. I've got to put in the work as much as I don't want to do it all the time. And it's just wild because, like, with a job where they're going to pay me, I pride myself in working very hard. But this thing that saves my life, I'm like, it's bullshit. I don't need to do it. I don't want to do it. And I go, I mean, it's not the constant, you know, thought process about it, but that's the thing that starts and then, you know, ultimately takes me out. Is I allow that to win, and I get lazy with that. I'm lazy with with recovery. And I don't like saying that I'm lazy about anything, but it's true.
I'll give you an example that's really shows the hypocrisy of myself with this. It's like 2 or 3 inpatients ago, I had a roommate, he was 19 years old, but he really looked up to me, matter of fact, called me dad, and I was a mentor. He was just like enamored. He found out I was an aircraft mechanic, and he's like, want to get into the field, and he's like, I'm laying out all this bull. I can tell he's genuinely interested, and I was giving him a bulletproof plan how to get into it, how to follow it. He was just like sucking up like a sponge. And then it came down to the end, and he had an opportunity to either go to California for his further on with his I guess PhD or whatever, or stay in Louisville. And I tried to talk to him for hours on this. Dude, you're 19 years old. Fill me out in California in that environment. I said I'd be doomed. And I just kept pushing him, and he was just like so excited about going to California. And then he got out there and he texted me back and forth, get in touch. Next thing you know, I got probably after also didn't hear any text from him for a couple of days. They get a phone call, hey, Cameron's dead. He overdosed out there in California. And then I'm sitting there, you know, bawling my eyes out because I'm so close to this kid, and then here I am still, again, being a hypocrite because I'm still doing it. And I'm telling him what not to do, but yet I'm still doing the same thing, maybe not with, you know, his thing being heroin or whatever, you know, he overdosed on, but you know, I look back at that and like, that right there was a rock solid moment for me to just show how much of a fucking hypocrite I've been, you know. It's like, you know, I'm trying to tell him, so I'm moving the face. I can't help myself the same thing, and give my own advice and my own experience.
Thank you for sharing, man. I've been doing this for quite some time, and I can't even count anymore how many times that's happened to me, you know, with my own family, with my friends, with my peers. You know, it is let me tell you something. We're going to take a break in a minute, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the message of recovery and how that message is delivered. You know, sometimes the message of recovery comes from an intervention, you know, like, hey, bro, you need to get sober. You need to make these changes, you know, and it's your family surrounding you with letters of love for you. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's a DUI, you know, sometimes it's a friend of ours passing away, you know, sometimes it's just, you know, the pain we see in our children's eyes when they confront us about our drinking or something like that, right? There's no telling where this message is going to come from. But all of that experience that you have with how you receive the message creates your message. And we try to carry that message to people, specifically addicts, once we've had that awakening, right? Like you already had that awakening and you tried to carry it to that kid and it just didn't click. You know what I mean? For some reason. And that sucks, man. You know what I mean? But I don't know. What is the message that I should get from that? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you take time to consider these and think about these situations, I mean, just maybe you come to some awareness about them, some higher understanding about it that you didn't have before that may facilitate you working on another problem you have, you fixing some other thing that you have going on in your life, or maybe you start helping people in some area because of some message that happened to you, you know? So there's there's no telling what kind of, there's good messages, there's bad messages, there's messages I want, there's messages I don't want. I don't get to choose how I get the message. The only thing I get to choose is whether I take it, and the messages, then the suggestions that I take are generating my message. So we're going to take like 15 minutes or so. We'll come back, take 20 minutes because we just went a long stretch. Come back at 2:35 And we're going to talk about what does it mean to carry the message? What is the message? And what's the message that we have to carry as individuals? So great job so far. Come on back after break, 2:35.
And you know her time? How long they keep your time for?
I agreed for 7 days.
7 days.